Hey, what's up, boys and girls? How you doing? I'm not doing fantastic myself, I have to say. Not been sleeping very well. We had the full moon a couple of nights ago. That can make it harder to sleep, but also I've got this funny gut rot going on. I've got kind of puffy belly at the moment and cramps, which is really weird for me because I don't normally get anything like that. But anyway, so last night I played my second over the board match for Chesterfield Chess Club. Like you may remember, I drew my first one. This was against Woodseats in Sheffield. We had 5 boards and I'm playing board 4. And so let me take you through the game and then we'll have a look at the analysis to see what where I could improve, what I could have done better in the game. Okay, so I've got the black pieces. My opponent starts with d4 and my first few moves I play pretty automatically. I play e5, the England Gambit, highly unsound at club level, but this is what I've been playing at Blitz and Rapid. However, it has to be noted that this is now a 75-minute classical game, so each player has an hour and a quarter. So maybe it should be frowned upon, I don't know. So my opponent takes the pawn, which is the correct move. Anything else is already equalising for for black, sorry. And I think in for a penny, in for a pound, we'll push forward d6 with the Charlick Gambit, the Hartlaub Charlick Gambit, and see if he wants to take the second pawn. He does, and I recapture with the bishop. Okay, so we're a pawn down. Notable feature is that we have a completely open d-file, and the general idea in an ideal world is to get your rook on d8, your queen on e7, and then at some point, if white castles, you want to throw in bishop takes h2 check and win the queen with the discovered attack by the rook. Okay, and we'll see how all of that pans out. It does sometimes happen. Okay, so knight comes out and I just follow suit with the opposite knight. White brings out knight to c3. And here, I mean, knight f6 is perfectly good. I decide to bring out my bishop to g4. And now he starts kicking my bishop, right? So he pushes h3. Now, I don't know what you think about this, but to me this feels like an uneconomical move. Because is he trying to prompt me to take the knight? You know, if my bishop there is a problem, right? Isn't h3, you know, why is it a problem? Well, the knight's not pinned. So, you know, he may just prompt me to take the knight here. I don't know. But he's also slightly weakening his pawns. So I drop back down to f5. I could have dropped back down to h5 as well. f5 means I'm targeting the c2 pawn, which means the queen, the only defender of the pawn, has to stay defending that pawn. Now he follows up with g4. I drop back to g6, and he continues with h4. Now clearly I can't allow him to take it, you know, get h5 in, because I'm out of squares, knight's covering that one. So I push h6 here. And now he pushes b3 after a think. And I'm thinking that's a lot of pawn moves, right? He's got 2 pieces out of the board, I've got 3. b3, and I'm thinking he wants to fianchetto this bishop. Now, my g7 pawn is undefended, but I know my knight can come out to f6, where it's also defended by the queen. So now I push d7. Now, what I really wanted to do was to play, queen e7. But if queen e7, I was worried about the knight coming in here, kicking my queen. And I didn't really know what to do in that situation. Kind of allowing this knight just the freedom of the city right in the center of the board and nothing to harass it. So I didn't do that. I pushed queen to d7. It's slightly awkward. Opponent now plays bishop h3. So you have to think, why did my opponent make that move? Well, clearly, if I was now to castle, then this is very unpleasant. Right, he does this, and he's now pinning my queen and king. I would have to do something like f5, but then he captures en passant, and I've got a big problem there. So I didn't want to castle. I mean, I do have this as well, and if bishop takes, we've got queen takes. So it's not the end of the world, but I just didn't fancy that kind of complication. So I now play my knight to e7, so that if he pushes, I could even put my knight there. So I didn't want to put my knight on f6, because this would be a double attack on queen and knight. So he pushes anyway, and now I stick my bishop in the way. It's now defended by knight and queen, so I'm all right with that. He takes and I take with the knight. Queen takes is also an option, and we've also got some tension here, which is interesting as well. Okay, now he fianchettos his bishop on b2. So I'm thinking, right, I know his general idea. He wants to castle queenside. He's happy with the fianchettoed bishop. It's a very solid setup he's got here. I don't really want him to do that, so I now long castle. Okay. Now, at this point, yeah, so he's coming up to, he's already used his first 15 minutes. He's coming up to having 50 minutes left on the clock, and I'm still within my first 15 minutes at this point, because I'm relatively comfortable with the opening, right? Now, so what he wants to do is he wants to get the queen off the back rank so that he can long castle, right? Obviously the queen can't go here because my knights are covering that. So my opponent here decides to push e4 and hit my knight. So I have a think about this, and there's not really a nice square for my knight to go. Can't go there because it gets taken. Can't go there or there because pawn takes. Can't go there because there's knight and queen attacking that. Right, so it's either back again to e7, which is not a very clever place for a knight to be, because knights are short-range fighters. Right, so what I decide to do now is move my rook from h to e8. So that's rook h e8. I have to write on my little piece of paper. As opposed to rook d to e8. So when there's two pieces that could move to the same square, you have to specify which one it is. And now the pawn is pinned and can't take the knight. So my knight is off the hook, at least temporarily. And now my opponent thinks for an h. So he goes down from, yeah, he spends about 15 minutes on this next move and decides to castle kingside. Now, clearly, because the king has now vacated the e1 square, means that my knight is now under attack. The pin is gone. The pin has been eliminated. I can't really take here. I kind of looked at it. Then I simply decide to drop my knight back to e7 anyway. Now, look at all my pieces are in this little cube here, right? But I don't like my opponent's position. Now, at this point, he has another really long think for like 15 minutes again, because I have a threat. Okay, so what I'm looking at is this. Let's say he does something, I don't know. What would be normal? Maybe like, you know, rook to there, for example. I don't know. But I can't think what he might be doing here. But my idea is this: queen goes to g4 with check. There's nothing that can block. Okay, so the king then has to go to h1. Then my queen comes into h3 with check again, and the king again has to come back to g1, which is a dark square. And then if that happens, I've got bishop h2 check, hitting the king, and now with a discovery on the queen. Now what would happen is knight would take bishop, then I get the queen, rook takes rook. So I've won a queen for a bishop and a rook, But then again, remember my queen is here, so and the knight's there, so I'd be able to win this pawn, and then I'd be able to bring a rook over, my other rook over, my remaining rook, and be okay. So we have to think. Now I'm thinking that the best move for him here is knight back to h2, because then if my queen can't come into that square, that's my only check, right? My only good check. The only other one would be bishop there, and then I simply take the bishop, and he survives. So after an age, he plays pawn to e5, and I play queen g4 check anyway. The king has two moves here, h1 or h2. But now I simply capture with the bishop, with check, and a discovered attack on the queen. So you can see here, it's like the principle, the main idea of the Charlick Gambit, why we give up that pawn and open up the d file and put the bishop on d6, like on the, what was it, third move of the game? Yeah, on move 3 is to set up this idea against the queen. But we're now on move 17, and finally the move kind of comes off, or a variant of the move. So if knight takes bishop, that's an interesting one, because from there he's then hitting my queen, right? And that's the move that he finds, but I simply capture on h4 with check again, forcing the king back, then I win the queen. Okay, so now I'm actually +7 in material. Now I'm +2 because he wins back. So it's by no means overwhelming in a material sense, but I have the strength of, I have a relatively safe king with a defensive knight and 3 pawns. So that's not a bad start. White's king, however, is way out in the board, and look at this pawn, it's miles offside. Okay, so I grab the knight back. Sorry, he takes this, I grab the free knight. Knight comes back, I grab the pawn, and really the remainder of the game. So this is a decent move. I bring my knight back here because I want to pair up my knights. I want to make sure I'm defended there. I really don't want to fall for anything stupid at this point. I know at this point that this is the game for me to lose. Now, what I want to do is I want to play knight f5, attacking the pinned piece. I can't do that straight away because rook takes rook, and I lose a rook for free. So I move my rook over to d8 and propose a trade. We trade off rooks. This is all good for me. I'm +6 in material at this point in time. So I'm up basically a queen for a rook, but I've got 2 extra pawns as well. Bishop comes here to attack, and I just calmly drop back. I want to maintain the pin on this knight. I want to play this move. Bishop comes in, and I'm just looking at kind of combos of, what can he do with the rook and the bishop together? So I play my knight out here anyway. I figure that he doesn't really have a strong attack. Rook d1 check, king c8. Now the pawn pushes forward, and now I take the knight. I just want to simplify, make life easier. So this pawn, obviously my queen was looking at that pawn. Okay, so now I push f6. So I was quite happy with this move because my idea is just to drop my knight onto e5, right? What you have to do at this point, and especially seeing as I'm really, really up on the clock, okay, so I've got something like 50 minutes left on my clock, and he's down to 13, right? What you have to do is you have to say, like, how could I possibly lose this game? Well, it's only going to be something like, the bishop's guarding this square and he drops his rook into here, and I get some, I don't know, sucker mate, or bishop's looking at that and he drops his rook into here, right? So I want to keep my knight there, or drop my knight in here and neutralize this bishop, because he can't checkmate me with a rook on his own unless I venture too far into my cave. So the rook now comes back here. I'm not too bothered about this because queen's guarding e8, so I'm okay with that. So I bring my knight up to e5. He pushes. I hit the rook. Rook comes here. I capture on f4 with check. the bishop's pinned, so can't capture, and he moves here. Now, for some reason, then I must have had a brain fart because I could have just taken the rook. But I bring my knight back to d5, and now I'm kind of threatening to come in here. Rook can't block, but it's pretty much a lost position, and my opponent here resigns. You know, drops his king, shakes my hand, and happy days, my first ever over the board win. And it's with a Charlick Gambit, so, you know, I'm happy as a pig in shit. So, fantastic stuff. So, that's the game. Now, afterwards we went over it, because he said, look, I just didn't know what I was doing from the beginning there. And I said, well, are you like a London player? And he said, yes, I was going to play the London. So, I'll pull up the analysis here. So you can see, I only scored 75.5 accuracy, but the point is that, you know, from a certain point, I was completely dominant in the game. So let's now go through the analysis, because it's an opportunity to learn. So, slightly dubious. Book. E takes d6 is best here. And that's fascinating. Because, yeah, after bishop takes, so it likes white at this point, right? But the point is that now, at this point, white isn't going to see this. White's going to see this in like 1 in every 300 games. But I see it something like 1 in 5 games when I play against 1d4, if not more. So he brings out his knight out. Bishop g4 is good. For some reason the machine likes a6, it's a minor difference. Yeah, the computer kind of agrees with me. I didn't rate this move, didn't think it was a necessary move. Here is okay, it says actually h5, bishop back to h5 was better. But hey ho, again inaccurate. Bishop g6, right, it's comfortable there. Now he pushes again, and now he's kind of lost his advantage, because, look, like we say, I've got this development lead, 3-on-2, and he's already decimated his own kingside. And as we see later on, he castles kingside. And there's a lesson in that. So h6, it doesn't like as much as h5. And this actually came up in a lesson recently. You know, Richard had this in a game where h5 was far superior, and I didn't think about it enough, because if you look at this, right, h5 here, if he takes, I take back with the bishop, and this is quite a nice situation. I guess bishop takes h5. No, the computer actually prefers rook takes h5, which is very interesting. Gives me a very mobile rook, though, with a complete control over this 5th rank, and that's not bad. So anyway, that's not what was played. I played h6. Should have thought a bit longer on that. And now b3 is a blunder. It says h5 was best. h5. h5 would have just kicked my bishop back to here, I think. Curious one. But b3 is a blunder. Why? Because it allows knight b4. And knight b4 looks at the c2 square with a potential fork on there. Now that's not what I played, because I now played queen d7. Okay. Now the computer here again says, yeah, I should have brought my knight into that square and targeted this weakness. Okay. So basically my opponent here has spent too many moves pushing these pawns up to no avail. He hasn't achieved anything from that. So anyway, I moved my queen onto that square. I knew it wasn't very comfortable. I only have a tiny disadvantage though at this point. My opponent plays bishop to h3, and now black has the tiniest edge. I bring my knight to e7, and it didn't like that. He said I could have castled, right? And we knew I could have castled. So if castles pushes, I still have this, I guess, yeah? What's the eval say? Bishop f5, and I'm actually minus 1.5 at this point. So yeah, I didn't really think that through well enough. And then if he wants to trade, and queen takes, then this is a very nice situation for black. I can come here, target this knight, rook's covering all of that. It's looking very nice indeed. Yeah, so I was just feeling a little bit cagey at that point, so I didn't want to castle. I played this move, which I knew felt clunky. But again, I think, you know, one lesson for me here is that I could have used my time a bit better as well. G5 is a mistake. Now it's a mistake because it hits my queen. This is the only good move. Great move. Trades. Here it says again, queen should have taken. But again, here, less than half a pawn difference, so we don't concern ourselves with that. Bishop b2 anyway, so he's pushing ahead with his ideas because he really, really wants to castle that side. And he said this to me after the game. He said, I really wanted to go queenside, but I couldn't. I couldn't get it in. So now I castle. It's saying, oh yeah, h takes here is better. I guess if I'd have taken there, what, knight takes? H takes, queen d5. So if here, if I take, obviously he can't take there, but if knight takes, what would have happened there? It's saying now I can just castle and I'm in a winning position. That is interesting. Very interesting. Okay, but anyway, so that's not what was played. He plays bishop here. I castle. I've got a slight edge. And now e4. This is one of the moves that he thought for a little while over. e4, a mistake. He should have taken on there. Rook h e8 is a blunder, again because of this. So it's kind of a blunder because I missed the opportunity, but I just, you know, I guess I was trying to keep things simple. So I play here to pin the pawn on the king, yeah? I should have taken here. Then if knight takes, leaves him with an isolated h pawn. There. And I'm -6 now. Because that would have been a blunder. Oh, and I've got two attacks on here. Okay, and I can come in with checks and stuff. Oof. Didn't see that. Okay, so hang on. If I take takes, yes. Yeah, that would have been really nice. I simply didn't see that combination, right? I found a move that I thought was good enough and I went with it. All right, so now he castles a complete blunder. King f1 was best. Now, here's the lesson, right? Sometimes castling isn't the right thing. Because when he castled his king, he put his king straight onto g1 and kind of lost the defense of the rook, which went behind this pawn, right? King f1, at least he's still got a mobile rook, right? His king's behind a pawn, but this was just walking into queen g4 check with a bishop lined up down there and with discoveries against the queen, all of these horrible ideas. So it's like, you know, we need to unlearn so many chess principles. Like Morpheus says, all rules can be bent, some of them can be broken, right? The idea of castling being a good idea is a general truth, but it's not always the truth. So in this case, it was completely losing. So it doesn't like this here. It says I should have given up my knight. So this is an interesting one. So there, now, if he'd have just taken, that would have been fine. And then it's saying queen h3 here. It's the best move for black. Because I'm threatening mate. Then I guess... Oh! Saying the best move now for white is actually sack the queen for the bishop. Because what about this? What about this? I mean, can't he defend it there? Well, now it's mate in 10, apparently. Starting with knight d4. trying to remove the protector of the h2 square. So that would have been brilliant if I'd have found it. But again, oh yeah, I suppose if queen takes, then I've got, it's saying queen g4 here, or I've got bishop there anyway. Anyway, we're getting to fish logic now. So castles, I bring my knight back, not great, but I am minus 5.5 here. So here, I know I have a winning position. And the point is that you don't get scored on your accuracy, you get scored on whether it says, you know, 0, 1 or 1, 0 on the sheet at the end of it. So in the end, we won 3.5 to 1.5 over the 5 games. And I think we're kind of second in our league, which is really cool. So anyway, so ugly move here, but it's all right. Then that's the great move. King h2. Apparently I have mate in 14 now, or mate in 12. Go figure. That's fine. And yeah, the rest is kind of straightforward. So this is the best move, clearly. You know, get my queen out of harm's way with check. Nothing can go wrong. And then it's just a case of closing it out. So yeah, really, really satisfying there to get my first over the board win. I'm so far undefeated over the board, which is pretty cool, with 1 draw, 1 win. So, you know, but the important thing is, what am I taking away from this? What am I taking away from this experience? I think one thing is I finished with 50 minutes left on my clock out of a 75-minute game, so I only used a third of my time. However, I was kind of going at it a bit rapid style, knowing that, you know, I was like choosing moves that I knew weren't a mistake. They may have been inaccurate, but they weren't mistakes, in order to keep the pressure on my opponent, because he knew and I knew that when he took, you know, when he was in this really horrible position, let's go back a few. Yeah, around here. Okay, so around here, it's actually saying the game is balanced, very slightly in black's favour, right? But I was feeling confident. And it wanted everybody to mess around in this corner. But with this move, which he took a while over, and then this move, which he took another 15 minutes over, he was already in time trouble at that point, you know, with only kind of 20 minutes left. So, yeah, I guess using my clock a bit more, and also realizing that there's no reason, dude, why these gambits and this repertoire can't be applied to club level play as well. You know, especially when it's as off the wall as the Charlick. So very much enjoying that. Also nice to see that Jonathan Schranz has finally discovered the Rousseau Gambit as well. Guy put out a video on it yesterday with some awesome analysis, which I've now updated my Rousseau Gambit study as well, thanks to this brilliant analysis by Jonathan Schranz, who really is one of the best educators out there. So if you're not following Jonathan Schranz, and if you like your gambits, follow Jonathan, he's awesome. But I'm feeling pretty good by myself. I just hope my tummy settles down, and that's it. So, you know, nice one. Bring on the next one. So I don't think I've got any more matches now until September, because we kind of start the new year in September. So I'm going to join the English Chess Federation then, pay my money, and get a full year in September. But other than that, I'm a happy bunny. Hope you enjoyed this as well. If you've got any other insights into this game as well, please feel free to add it in the comments. Other than that, thanks for watching. I'll see you later.